All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. We're happy that you're with us. Just a moment of housekeeping. You're all on mute at the moment, but we would still love to be able to hear your questions. We'll do a shout out for questions throughout the entire time we're together. So please know that you can put your questions in the chat bar. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Lori Wolf. I'm the president and CEO of the 4-Acre Group and a proud partner to Pick.Click.Give, and I'm joined here with Jessie Lavoie, who's the Pick.Click.Give program director. And we're going to just get started with our favorite moment, which is knowing who is with us on this chat today. So in the chat bar, if you wouldn't mind, let us know who's with us across the state of Alaska today. We have 23 and counting coming into the call. So in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, your name, your organization, your location, let's get connected across Alaska. And while you're doing that, just offer that we have added a new feature to our Zoom sessions. We have closed captioning for those who would like to use that tool. After the introductions, Kate Rose on our team will put some instructions just in case you need them, but there's a little click on the top of your screen that you can use to get to those closed captioning if you would like to access them. Great to see Homer and the Valley and Girdwood and Anchorage and Ketchikan. Great to see you all. Those of you just joining us, we're just putting our names, our organizations, and our locations in the chat bar and getting connected across Alaska. Love to see you. Lovely to see you all. All right, we'll keep those coming. And again, they're closed captioning available for those of you who are interested in accessing that. Thanks again for joining us. This is the second session that we're offering in Pick.Click.Give for 2021. And like always, we record these, and then Jessie and her magic put them up in the world so you can access them, and we share in that recording as also the slides and all of those wonderful things. So don't worry, you'll have access to this information, and you can share it with the rest of your team who wasn't able to be with us today. Before we launch into the content of our time today, which is really about setting goals and integrating Pick.Click.Give into your overall development life, I'm going to turn it over to Jessie, and she's going to give us some updates and some helpful tips. So Jessie, go ahead.
Thank you, Lori. Welcome everybody, another large, wonderful group. I won't take up too much time here, just a couple of announcements. So far, the program has raised over $1.1 million. So that's all your hard work going into that. So we're well on our way. We're trending just slightly ahead of even last year, which is remarkable. So whatever you're doing, keep it up. Okay. My other important announcement, probably the most important, is if you haven't already noticed, applications for 2022 are open to participate in the next campaign. You have to apply every year. And those are open right now, February 1st, and close promptly March 31st at midnight. And there's nothing I can do about that deadline. It takes legislative action to extend that. So please do not wait until the last minute to apply again. If you have questions, concerns about any of the paperwork, 990, IRS approved extension, any of that, please email me. I'll put the contact information in the chat for you so it's easily accessible. Do not wait until the last minute. It's really important because if there's any hiccups, we want to be able to take some time to address those with you. So those are my only two big things. You're doing great. Everything's going well. No complaints. And I'm excited to hear what Lori has to say.
Those are the kind of updates we like, Jessie. All good news all the time. Yay. Thank you. And again, I'll just say we've over the years just made it easier and easier and easier to fill out that application. It's got little pop-ups to give you little pointers and all the things. And Jessie is just fabulous at answering your questions when you contact her directly. So watch that chat bar. Jessie will put her information in there. And I'll just reinforce, don't wait till the last minute, even though it's pretty easy. It does require some other few pieces of paper in your life, and you're not going to want to scramble to try to find out where those pieces of paper are. So apply and tell your friends and share it on your own social media so that other nonprofits know that they can apply as well. It's important for us all to to be part of sharing and being ambassadors to the program and sharing that information. So thanks to everyone for helping us spread the word. Okay, well, I'm loving that the chat bar is continuing to populate itself. Welcome new folks to the room this morning. We're just saying hello across the state on the chat bar. Also, just again, remind you that you are all on mute, but the way to get your question answered is in that chat bar. The way that we'll work the rest of our time this hour is that I'm gonna provide a presentation around what it means to set goals, which is what you all signed up for today. And then we will turn to the questions and get those answered. And Jesse will be watching the chat bar as I go. And so Jesse, full privilege, and Rain, please jump in anytime. If there's a question that's pertinent to what I'm saying in the moment, feel free to interrupt me and I can take that as we go. Otherwise, we'll take the Pick.Click.Give questions at the end of our time. All right, well, let's jump in, everybody, since we just have a little bit of just an hour together. It always goes so fast. All right, so the very first thing to just remind everybody, of course, I've said this so often as Pick.Click.Give has been around, which is that ultimately Pick.Click.Give is a tool in your toolbox, not the whole box. I think we get, a couple organizations every year who say, well, I'm on the list and now I'm going to raise millions of dollars and it's just going to be so great, but I don't actually have to do anything. I don't have to talk about it. I don't have to plan around it. I don't have to do anything. It's just because I'm on the list, people are magically going to pick my organization and it's all going to turn out perfect. And you might imagine they're a little disappointed when the tally comes in and they really haven't raised any money at all. So we just want to reiterate over and over again, it's a tool in the toolbox. And ultimately, the more you're integrating that tool into your overall development work, overall fundraising work, the better it's going to work for you. So really thinking about that. Now, for some of you, that's a pretty sophisticated thing to talk about because you have a very robust plan and you're working a lot of different strategies with a lot of different kinds of donors, with a lot of different tools in your toolbox. And some of you, it's a pretty straightforward, not, really pretty simple box that works super well. So having lots of moving parts and pieces doesn't necessarily mean you're more successful than the one that just has a couple of pieces. What you can all have in common is a clear focus and a clear intention around how you want to use the tools. That's what's key in this exercise, right? So part of that really integrating your tool on purpose is to really, again, focus your attention. You can all do that. Again, if you're a one-person shop, if you're a 12-person shop, if you've got your whole board, if you've got none of your board, if you've got a few staff, if you have no staff, we can all focus our attention. We can all align our strategies. If Pick.Click.Give is your signature tool in your toolbox, if it's the tool that you like to use the most, and making sure you're aligning that tool to all the other strategies that you have around communication, internal and external, around the way that you're focusing on helping people use that tool, et cetera, right? And really, again, just trying to see the bigger picture. Again, that Pick.Click.Give it's got its amazingness and it's got its challenges, right? So really understanding that what are the opportunities and the limitations of the tool, and so then how do you put the other tools around it to even out some of those limitations and really highlight those opportunities. So we're going to talk today just about kind of what does it mean to really see it as a tool in the toolbox. So of course, I have to show you this picture because I don't do any fundraising conversations without showing you this picture. This is my picture of what it looks like to be in relationship, to really embrace the whole cycle of relationship-based fund development, of really thinking about what our roles are. Again, Pick.Click.Give is usually a strategy of asking. It doesn't really attend to all the other pieces of the relationship. And so we want to remind you of that, right, if you see those, if this is new for you, that those percentages on the side, those can either be thought of in the macro, how does my organization spend its time on this thing called development, on this thing called philanthropy, on this thing called connecting donors to the things that they care about. And it could be seen in the micro. How do I spend my time? Now, if you're the lead staff person in your organization, if you're the lead development person in your organization, this might look a little bit like your job description. If you have no staff, but you are the leader in your board, this might look like the job description. But it really, what we know is that no board will, I've never met a board in all my years of doing this work, I've been doing it a long time, never met a board of 100% askers. So that's not what we're after here. We really want to help our board find their comfort zone across the spectrum of places to participate. So lots of conversation we can have with you about all of these pieces over at 4Acre. And please let us know if these are conversations you'd like to have. But here in this moment, I'll just highlight that for most of us, Pick.Click.Give is an asking tool. And so we have to build around it so that it is the most successful tool we can use in our toolbox. So ultimately, what we're going to say today in this very brief amount of time that we have together is I'm not in your shop. I'm not in your organization. I don't know your core values. I don't know your mission. That's up to you. We often say fund development is 70% science and 30% art. The art is your purpose, your values, your commitment to philanthropy, which means love of humankind, your commitment to relationships, that's all the art part. What we can talk about is the science and how we use the tools in the right place at the right time to move us forward. But ultimately, you're going to be the judge of where is the right way to do this. And I'll just say, right, there's no such thing as one size fits all in fund development. We're not going to take this tool and make it work for everybody all the time. It is a really successful tool, but again, it's successful because different organizations have different focus areas. So we're going to focus. That's what we're going to talk about today. So ultimately, if you're hoping that Pick.Click.Give is going to work for every single donor or every single prospect, you really definitely need to rethink your strategies. So for those of you who've been with Pick.Click.Give before, I'm talking to you now, lots of you have been, we have about 30 some odd of you on the call. Many of you have been in this program before. So if that's you, the best place to start, if you're going to set your goals, is to start with what you know. The best predictor of future giving is past giving. So let's look at your own history. Let's look at your own donor data. And so just providing you some pretty straightforward questions to ask yourself as you're looking at your data. Ideally, you all have a really wonderful donor database that is relational in nature, which means it can connect the dots between people and the tools in the toolbox. Some of you are still living in an Excel spreadsheet or maybe even less than that. And so this, my hope for you all in 2021 is that you move to a donor database system. Those are, there's really no reason to not have one anymore. They're very affordable. Some of them are even free. They're cloud-based and they do their job, and they're 1,000 times better than an Excel spreadsheet will ever be, or any other tool that you might be using that's hand-built. So for those of you, no matter what kind of tool you're using, it's important to look at your history. It will help you set your goals for this coming year and to be more realistic about those goals. So just some questions that you might ask yourself. Again, they're pretty straightforward, but you'd be surprised. Lots of our organizations are not looking at their data, and they're not using their data to inform their plans for the coming year. So in addition to those questions, I just ask you to, again, I'm not in your organization. I can't see what you can see. So ask yourself, what other trends in the data are you seeing from year to year? This is especially true for those of you who've been with us for a long time in this program. You have some really important gems of information in that data. And how do you really talk about that? Again, this isn't just data for you. You want to really maximize that with your whole team, and really people will see things that maybe you don't see. So again, put a small team together to look at that data. You also might consider in those trends kind of how your own internal team, do you have more tools in your toolbox than your own team? Do you have that donor database now that you didn't have when you started with Pick.Click.Give? Has your board had some good training on that science of fundraising? Have you taken some extra classes or education yourself? So The trends could also be that your own internal infrastructure is a little bit more sophisticated than it was when you started in Pick.Click.Give, and that will impact your ability to be successful. So based on your data, now we're going to set our goals. Now, if you're brand new to Pick.Click.Give, right, this is educated guessing. So what I really want you to do is think about, where is the gap for you in your donors? Are you looking for more new donors? Are you looking to retain your donors? Or are you looking to what sometimes we call the and moments, those like helping Pick.Click.Give have people make an additional gift? Now, again, you could say, yes, I want all those things. But again, you're going to be more successful if you can focus your goals. So we're going to actually peel these apart together and talk about kind of why they have different strategies that go with them. So my thought for most of you, especially if you're new, is that the holy grail in fund development is donor retention. So it's not, so if you're not sure where to start, try using it as a retention strategy. It's a really, really wonderful tool for that, and we'll get more into that later. You also might, again, I'm always keen on setting some non-financial goals along with your financial goals. So don't talk too much about this for the rest of the time, but just to highlight real quickly that you should set, if you have the capacity to set some non-financial goals as well, maybe around team engagement around Pick.Click.Give, maybe around some training. Maybe the goal is to integrate this tool into the whole toolbox. Or maybe your goal is around some consistent communication. So no matter if I go on your social media or your website, or I get a piece of mail from you, I get some consistent messaging. Those are all really wonderful goals as well. They will, in the end, drive your financial bottom line, but in a less linear way. So let's look at some of these goals and see why they're different, and then maybe help you think about which one you want to focus on. So I shared this with you in the course last week. I'll share it with you again. It's a good thing to remember. This is based on some really good, solid research that we've been referring to for a really long time. It still seems true, right? So donors are motivated differently by the kind of gift they're about to give. And so we think of in Pick.Click.Give, again, there's these 3 different focus areas that we have for Pick.Click.Give. That first-time donor who gives out of impulse or emotion, they're excited, they're motivated. That impulse or emotion can be either negative or positive, but there is something about the impulse of picking or giving while we're filing our PFD, and we're motivated and energized by an emotional connect, a story, something that's pulled on our heart and made sense in our head. Click that button and to choose your organization's mission. So donors give because they care about missions, and they're motivated by and connected emotionally to that conversation. We've seen so many examples in our world of impulse or emotion gifts. This is often why we see giving goes up after a natural or human-made disaster. We see because people are driven to give, right? We could talk about why GoFundMe accounts are so motivating for people, and that is definitely an impulse or an emotional moment for people, right? So Pick.Click.Give can be that impulse or that emotion. Again, the subsequent gift, the annual gift, the habit gift. This is where I've been with Pick.Click.Give since day one. And it's a habit for me. I can't imagine filing for my PFD and not Pick.Click and giving. It's just a healthy, fabulous habit in my life. I use it every year, wouldn't miss it. So we want to maximize that habit for people. So habit requires support, and it requires reminding. My analogy to this outside of Pick.Click.Give is people who have membership campaigns, and they call and they say, oh, our membership is down. And I say, oh, why is that? And they say, well, we didn't ask. I'm like, okay, well, so if we don't actually remind people to have the healthy habit, then they don't actually have it. And if we don't support them to have that habit, then they don't keep it up. So we're going to talk about the habit donor. Again, this is that holy grail, is that sustaining donor who's giving every year, every time, right? If we want people to upgrade, to use this Pick.Click.Give as an upgrade to give an increased amount of money, we have to make it a rational choice from their perspective. And I'm going to talk more about what that looks like as we go. So there's 3 different strategies that we can use. And this is, again, why we say it's not a one-size-fits-all tool. If you really want to focus different audiences, all three of them all the same time, boy, you got to have a good plan. And that plan has to be very integrated into your whole overall strategy. I leave those other two beside for a conversation another time. They're not Pick.Click.Give strategies, so I just set them there to know that there are other tools in the toolbox that we won't be coming to with Pick.Click.Give. So if you decide that your goal is around new donors, again, the new donor is not just anyone in the world. The new donor is what we call a prospect. A prospect is not just anyone in the world. A prospect is someone who has a human connection, what we call a linkage. There's a way to have a human connect. There's interest. Remember that giving is about the donor and what they care about, and they have demonstrated that interest. They have clicked on your website. They have asked you a question. They have, in pre-COVID time, they've attended a personal event, or in COVID's life, they've attended something virtual. They've done something to suggest that they're interested. And then they have the ability / more importantly, the willingness to give the gift that you're asking for. So again, you could have a whole strategy of that's focused on people that don't actually get a PFD. That maybe means that they don't have the ability or the will. Maybe they have willingness, but they don't have ability because they're not getting a PFD. So this is not a good strategy for them, right? So the obvious examples for new donors to look through who have linkage, interest, and ability, and maybe willingness, would be your current volunteers, your former donors, your former team members, et cetera, right? So really your vendors, people who you're already in relationship with, people who are already in your database, but are not yet donors. That's the most obvious place to start. We know some of our organizations that participate in Pick.Click.Give, they have amazingly robust volunteer pools, and they really focus on those volunteers to become first-time donors. They also focus on some of them to become annual or repeat donor, habit donors too. So again, really focusing, if you're new donors, your focus in your communication is that emotional motivation to participate. Later on, our goal will be to turn these new donors into habit donors. But right now, we're focusing our communication on the impulse or the emotional side of those strategies. Some questions that, again, we're going to share this slide deck with you. So I won't read all these questions to you. You'll have them in your toolbox. But again, if you're trying to focus your work on new donors, just trying to create some questions that you might ask yourself, again, to fill out that larger piece of the conversation, because it's not just about the ask, it's about the whole relationship cycle. So just really thinking about, right, if you get them, if they say yes, then what happens? Because the goal is really to move them into the habit space, to move them into the annual space. So don't just leave them at the click, right? Make sure that we're really integrating them into the whole conversation. So some questions to ponder if your goal is around new donors. I did just for fun, I didn't do this for all of the examples, but I did just for fun, just give a very quick kind of the 30,000 foot view version of what it would look like if I built a plan using my little circle of engagement, what it would look like if I was trying to focus on new donors through Pick.Click.Give. And you'll see where Pick.Click.Give, the strategy of Pick.Click.Give is in the request, but I just tried to now, and full disclosure, right, it's not perfect. And there's so many more things you could be doing in each of these categories, but I just tried to, put a little bit of pieces in together so you could just see, right? You don't have to be super sophisticated. You don't have to be doesn't have to be a plan that's 1,000,000 pages long. It can fit on a PowerPoint slide, a crowded one at that, but it can fit on a slide, right? So again, just really thinking about how do you make this plan work for you? And again, could be much more robust. It could be even much more simple than this, but the idea is to really put it all together into a plan. If your goal is to retain donors, I really feel like this is a no-lose set goal space for you, is to keep the donors. Again, for those of you who have been in the program before, keep the donors you already have. And that will require, right, we'll see attrition for many reasons. One of which is that some people just don't live in Alaska anymore and they won't use they don't have a PFD anymore. And so there's going to be some natural attrition going on, but you want attrition based on that, not based on the fact that you forgot to communicate with people, that you forgot to say thank you, that you forgot that they were human beings who cared about your mission, that you forgot to connect with them, right? You don't want it to be that reason that they no longer are choosing you through this program or choosing you at all through any sort of donor conversation. We always like to remind you it's 10 times cheaper to get back an old donor than to get a new one. So maybe your goal in retention is really around getting back some of your past donors who participated with you before and who are still Alaskans, who are still getting their PFD, and you still want to connect with them. Again, like other tools in the toolbox, this is really, think of Pick.Click.Give as a tool like you would have used direct mail, or like some of you have your sustaining pledge strategies, or you have workplace giving. Pick.Click.Give is a tool just like that in your toolbox. It's really about creating that healthy habit and all of the reinforcement that a healthy habit needs. So really thinking about it as a support, as in all the ways that you support people to have that habit. So lots of reinforcement, lots of good cheerleading, lots of good reminding, lots of all the things that help people feel successful. So again, some questions that you might use to focus your work on existing donors. And again, having that good donor data is really going to help you answer these questions. And really, again, won't read them all to you. You can see them on the screen here, but really just trying to motivate you to think about with your team how you might use your data to help you craft and set your goals to be realistic. And to be, I think really in philanthropy, we're always learning, right? The mistakes that we make are just information that we use to learn the next time. So these questions are really about, again, not fault or blame, but what did we learn and how can we move forward? Also, I hope that they help you get more connected with your donors, which would be winning all the way around. If your goal is about increasing the amount of money that people give, again, Pick.Click.Give is a great retention tool, that fantastic healthy habit. But again, oh, that's really fun. Some of that's repeat. Gosh, I'll have to fix my slides there. I was so excited about it. I just want to give it to you again. Let me jump down to the new piece of information on this slide, which is really about that upgrade. Remind you from that earlier conversation that upgrade is a rational choice. I want to just remind you, right, that people are not, that upgrade is a rational choice conversation is not because you need it. You can't say, oh my gosh, we're desperate and we're going to close our doors if you don't give us money. That's essentially saying to people, we're a big black hole, you should throw your money in it. That's not motivational for people. That's a crisis strategy. You can use it once, but Pick.Click.Give isn't a one and done strategy. Pick.Click.Give is a strategy for helping people stay connected. So really, and again, these gifts are delayed. So using a crisis message is not a good message either, because you're not going to get these gifts right away anyway. So really, please stay away from the crisis as much as you can, and really remind yourself regularly that donors give because you meet community needs, because they are investing in the things that they care about. Our job, we'd like to say in philanthropy that money goes through us, not to us. You're not keeping this, you're doing good mission with it. And doing good mission includes paying your staff and turning the lights on and doing all that wonderful overhead stuff that people like to shy away from. That's a whole wonderful conversation we should have. But all of this money that's given is helping make your communities a better place. And that's what I would focus on. What difference does mission make in the community, and how can the donor connect to making that difference? Sometimes we talk about in this conversations, how can your donor be part of something greater than they are by themselves? That sense of community, so incredibly important. And it really does help motivate that donor to stick with us because they feel a part of something greater than they are by themselves. So when we are trying to create that and opportunity, I give to your organization in 6 other ways, and I use Pick.Click.Give to increase my total yearly giving. We like to think of course, these who we're talking to here are our consistent donors. These are people who have really connected to us all along the way, and we're asking them to make that additional gift. Now, again, remember, this gift is delayed for some of them, so you want to really know your donors and their timing. because this gift doesn't come exactly when you right when they give it. So really, again, just trying to think about, right, which audience you might focus on. I really encourage you to think about these are kind of your mid or your high range donors that might be participating with you in this way, because your entry level donors have already probably you've been strategizing with them that they're only going to give one gift, and that maybe you've talked about them in a different goal, right? So here you're talking to your mid-range or your high-range donors who are going to make that additional gift through Pick.Click.Give. And again, just again, reminding you that this is a relationship-based strategy. You're not just going to wander up to a stranger and ask them to give an additional gift. These are for people you already know and are in relationship with. So again, just trying to create some tips and some questions that you can ask amongst your team. We do see this strategy in play in Pick.Click.Give. This is not pie in the sky. We see all of these strategies being used. And again, from the Pick.Click.Give's very inception, the very idea, get new donors to engage in philanthropy across Alaska, help donors increase the amount of money that they're giving, and raise the awareness about individual philanthropy in the state of Alaska. Those were the goals from the very beginning of Pick.Click.Give. We're just tying them in to your experience in your own organization. No matter which goal you choose, some of you will choose all three. Some of you will just choose one. Again, no matter what goal you choose, your job is to ensure that the team is aligned to those goals. You don't have some team members wandering over there and some team members wandering over here. You're all aligned to the goals. So all the internal communication that you need to do so that everybody is aligned in the way that they're talking about it, in the way that we're celebrating it and working on our strategies in the board and the staff room, to writing it all the way into our plans. So we want to align it to our team and integrate those goals into our overall plans. So what this requires is not just doing, but actually time to reflect, respond, and adjust. I really want to encourage you all that the place to really capture this is in the moment. So you're going to do stuff and then you're going to learn about it. And when you learn those lessons about how it worked in 2021, I actually want you to write it down right when you're learning it for 2022, so you don't lose it, so you don't have to start from scratch next time, right? So capture those lessons, bring your team together, virtually or physically. Maybe by this time we'll be physical, who knows, right? Really encourage everyone that this work of development is about active learning, that mistakes are information, and that we want to use that information to actually craft our next plan. And you'll tweak it this time again next year, but at least you'll have something that you're working from that feels real and alive from your learning from this year. So just encourage you to integrate, not just for today, but for next year as well. Also, just remind you as well, just a quick reminder, no matter what goal you choose, that don't skip the relationship building stage of the process. And I did, we're wandering around Fork, talking about Zoomceptions now to replace receptions, right? Or house parties or anything that we would do in person. So I just tried to give you some ideas of some things that you might do that everyone could do around in the relationship building thing that was related to Pick.Click.Give. Again, watching physical distancing, mask guidelines, all, keeping people safe, #1 priority. But really thinking about, again, Pick.Click.Give is an asking tool, but there's a whole cycle of relationship to attend to. This is not a comprehensive list by any means, but just a quick reminder that this is an essential part of the conversation. Again, happy to take questions about this, and we can go back to it at the end. And then finally, in every goal, don't forget that our job is to keep people inspired and connected to what the mission is doing in the community, right? This is not a one and done. This is not a Pick.Click.Give and be done, right? This is a tool in your relationship toolbox. So how do you want to keep inspiration at the top of that conversation? That's everything from the way that you commit as an organization to providing follow through and accountability and communication, to your commitment to staying in touch externally with your donors. Those that are new, those that renewed, those that upgraded, they all need communication from you that is appropriate to who they are in the world. So at a minimum, you're going to write 3 different kinds of letters if you have 3 different kinds of goals. You may segment even more than that, depending on who they are and how they're connected to your organization. But again, no one size fits all, no one and done letters, no receipts. Don't just treat people like walking checkbooks or ATM machines that decided to pick, click, and give. They're whole people. They're connecting to you for real reasons. Your job, I often say when we're teaching fund development and other strategies, your job is to remember you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And that is the relationship with which you should connect with your donors. Really connect and listen to what they care about. And then help reinforce that, help explore that with them, help them feel a part of that. Right? And that's what this overall commitment, again, no matter which donor group you choose, that's the part that will help them keep coming back over and over and over again, because they know it's about them, not just about you. So lots to say, lots more that comes underneath. This is a very high level, big picture exploration of picking different goals and how they would look different. I am happy to take questions. Jesse and I have created lots of space at the end here to take questions. We can take questions about these conversations that we just had, or we can have practical conversations with Jesse. Before, the last thing that I'll share with you right here before we get here is just to say, no matter which goal you choose, 6 steps, make it easy. If anything in fund development, if it starts with the conversation of, well, that's complicated, then we're done. Fund development cannot be complicated. Has to be easy. Has to be easy and manageable for you and for the donor. Has to be really straightforward. Again, that's why Pick.Click.Give is so great, because we've been making it easier every year, right? It has to be meaningful to the mission and to the donor. It has to be time limited. Guess what? Pick.Click.Give, it has a time horizon. So we built that in for you. Other strategies might not always have a time horizon, but we like it to have a time horizon. So you're not always just asking, but you've got a time indicators of like when you're saying thank you, and when you're asking, and when you're doing your good listening, and when you're doing your planning. You always have to know your next step. So you get the donors, so they say yes, so they pick, click, and give. Now what? Plan that in advance. Plan now for how you're going to say thank you to your new donors. Plan now for how you're going to celebrate and get people to say that they have chosen you through Pick.Click.Give even before you get your final list. We see some remarkable strategies in recognition around people who are creating different recognition circles for their Pick.Click.Give donors, who are helping them celebrate long before we get those official lists. Write it down. If your plan isn't written down, it's just a good idea in your head, and it can't be a team sport. And fund development is always more successful when it's a team sport. So write it down and share that plan with your team. Your team might be your board, your volunteers, your staff, some combination of all of those people, one group of those people, whoever your team is. Write it down, share the plan, make sure everybody owns it. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to have some assumptions in it. So it's a living document. So be willing to adapt the plan as you go. And I always like to remind people that the first 3 letters of the word fundraising are the words fun. So put some fun in this thing. If it's not fun, you're not going to do it. And fun doesn't mean not hard work. This might be really hard, but build the fun into it, both for you and the donors that you're talking to and the potential donors that you're talking to. And I'm pretty sure they'll come back. So with that, Jesse's put a nice reminder in the chat bar. That was a ton of information in a short amount of time, friends. I am happy to go back and focus on any of those different donor groups and offer you a little bit more about any of those different kinds of donors. Jessie can also weigh in too about what we're seeing in the data. If the data is a little hard to kind of parse out, but we'll do our best. So we left lots of room for questions, and I'm happy to slow down and go back.
All while we give everyone a chance to formulate a question or get into the chat bar as quickly as possible, because I know you all have one and you're all going at once. I'll start off just because I hear this from some of our participants fairly often, and I would be curious as to your opinion, Lori. The PFD, like we said in the last training, this is, not political, but we can't help but talk about the amount of the PFD. Over the last several years, it has been a battle. It's been up and down. No one knows what it's going to be, and then it's cut in half, and then we have supplemental PFDs. And so that's got to be confusing for donors. So how might, if that is a problem for some of our donors, which I'm sure some of these organizations have those donors that are very savvy, how might you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think acknowledging that those are, well, again, I would say, which donor are we talking to, right? So are we going to talk to our new donors? Are we going to talk to our annual donors? Are we going to talk to our increasing donors, right? Our AND donors, right? So I would say, the place where this probably impacts our donors the most are the people who are using it as a habit. Because they're used to this healthy habit, and the habit is changing on them, right? The timing feels different, some can feel different to them. But really, I mean, that's the perception, but the reality is that in all of those strategies you just mentioned, the timing for giving hasn't changed, right? What's changing is the timing of getting the gift, right? So we saw it, come out in July, that part's changing, right? So I would say to remind our annual repeat habit donors, right, that the timeline to give the gift, to make the choice, that's not part of this frenzy of debate, right? Now, it may be, right, that, and we don't have a crystal ball, and we're not the political decision makers, so we don't know, but it is possible, right, that the permanent fund will go away one day, in which case we will lose this habit tool for people. Well, we'll lose the tool for everybody. But if we're talking to those donors, we'll lose that tool. And we will have to translate that habit into a different vehicle. And I don't think I never want that to happen from a philanthropy standpoint. I'm only going to talk philanthropy here. I'm not going to talk politics, right? But from a philanthropy standpoint, this is an amazing tool. It's why we created this tool, because it really works and it's a great tool. But you all have to remember that this is a tool in the toolbox that used to look like other tools in toolboxes: direct mail, workplace giving, sustaining pledge givers, right? So it's not a bad idea for all of us internally to begin to think about, what is our backup plan going to be for these donors? How are we going to translate them to a different tool if this particular tool goes away? I hope that never happens, but I just want to be realistic with people. And I just want to say, like, it's all of our jobs to be thinking about what that plan might look like, right? So I say that. I'd say if you're trying to use it as a if you will, a prospecting tool, a way to get new donors, right? Again, I'd stay out of the politics of this. Your job is to focus on philanthropy. Your job is to focus on and encourage, don't be eyes, head in the sand, eyes down, not aware of what's going on. Last time we were together, Jesse, we talked about really always just trying to have a good set of crisis messages, if you will, right? What's your plan for a changing deadline? What's your plan for, how will your communication shift? Don't wait until the day it has to shift to write that message. We've already seen it in action last year. You can use last year's experience to write this year's message. That's what I was kind of talking about before, about like, use your lessons from the year before to know how to act this year. So you should be all writing and be ready with the click of the button to adapt and shift if the politics of the day adapt and shift. So I don't know, it's hard to be super generic about this, Jesse. In every organization, we'll have a specific set of strategies. But again, I think it really depends on which donor group we're really focused on. And I'd say for all of you, I'd pick a primary and a secondary, and maybe leave the third one for next year's trial. Right?
Not a bad plan. Yeah. So okay. That's good. And so I will say there's no fear right now that the PFD is going to go away. It's just what it will look like. The amount is what's tripping some conversations that are a little difficult to have. So ultimately, it does not matter. There'll be some sort of PFD, and that they can obviously support you through that. So that's the conversation to have of there's an amount.
Exactly. And I would just also say, right, if your focus is your and donors, which the people who are giving the additional gift, right, these are the places where you you might, if the amount is very much less than, right, then this is your strategy. These are people they're in your system already. They're not strangers. So have real conversations with them about different tools in the toolbox, right? I would say if your data also shows you that some of your donors are making very major or significant gifts, like they're giving you their whole PFD, that's probably 2 or 3 people in each of your lives, right? So be real with them. They're human beings. Be in conversation with them. Have real conversations with them. Don't be generic. Don't send them a form letter. Don't send them a social media post. Pick up the phone and be real with them and talk with them about how they're going to adapt or shift if the PFD's amount of money that they normally give you is not the same amount.
Honest conversations. I like it.
Have honest conversations, people. These are not scary people. They love mission. Approach them as if they love mission, because guess what? They do. Yep.
Yeah. So Keegan has a good question, and I can start off, and then Lori, maybe you can add some to this. So could you share an example of a timeline for setting up a Pick.Click.Give campaign? So Keegan, high arching, what I would recommend is that you should definitely be thinking about it in November. You should have an action plan by December, January through March. That's when all the filing is happening. So the major pushes, the communications for reminders are there, and our statewide marketing campaign does address that. And then you have August 31st, which is the pledge deadline. So those are your high arching dates, but I guess I would add to your question and pose to Lori, how might, with that general timeline, would you overlap it to something you may already be doing so it's not too much extra work?
Well, let me add 2 other pieces to this, Jesse, before I answer that question, which is you just mentioned really quickly, right, that there's a statewide campaign that's going on. And so that Jesse is the orchestrator of with her marketing partners. And so, right, and when there's calls to action to nonprofits to engage in the statewide pieces, that Jesse will let you know. So there may be points, and those change every year. But Jesse will be really forthcoming with you if there's like a moment, right, for everybody to do the same thing. So just know that, and so you can speak more to the statewide marketing effort. So there's that piece. Again, if you're new to the program, that's an important piece to recognize, that there's this statewide effort going on alongside of your individual efforts. Gosh, I started answering that question and now I forgot what your other question was. There's other things I should think about so it's not too burdensome. So one thing I want everyone to be thinking about right now is the recognition piece of because again, there's a delay between when people pick, click, and give, which is in the end of March, right? And really they can make additions, hopefully not subtractions, but additions through August. We don't actually see that money. Most of us won't see that money until the following November. So there's a delay. This is the one tool in your philanthropic toolbox that has this huge delay from the time someone gives the gift to the time you get it, except for planned giving, right? And and so we want to know right now, we want to have a plan right now on our calendar of how we're going to say thank you. And I would say one of the things that we watch is that some people just wait till the very end to say thank you, but other groups are actually doing recognition right here and right now. So they're trying to actually help people say, hey, I did that, right? So we've seen some pretty fun social media campaigns of like, tell us if you pick, click, and gave, right? Or we've seen some really wonderful board ambassadorship of people using social media to say, hey, I just filled out my PFD and I pick, click, and gave to these organizations and I'm so proud of this board I serve on and blah, 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 right? And so really just getting people to engage in that recognition even during the program, even though you're not going to do the official stuff, if you will, for the end. Overall, how to not make it overwhelming, I'll just say it again, pick an audience. Pick one of these groups that you want to focus on. If it feels overwhelming, don't pick all 3. Pick one, do it really well, learn a lot. Next year, you might pick 2. Maybe the year after that, you pick 3, right? You want to make it, and again, if you've got a calendar of events, you've got a plan, you've got a communications plan, you've got a development plan, you roll this in as a tool in your toolbox. You don't have any of those things, this can be the first basis of your plan. You might take that little circle example that I gave and start there. Jesse, are you looking at questions? There you go. Yeah.
I am. Nothing yet. So please, we do have a few more minutes. If you have a burning question, put it into the chat box. I'll briefly explain a little more detail of the statewide marketing campaign, and I put some text in there. So that is what essentially you pay for with that admin fee, is that statewide marketing campaign. And that starts in December with Google ads, Facebook ads, any digital reminder that we can do, as well as a produced commercial and podcasts and anything we can do to share your story and get the reminder out there, all through the end of March. And then we do a sprint, so to speak, in August to try and get your donors to go in and up their donation by August 31st. What I always tell our participants, though, is we put in this effort. We have this great statewide marketing campaign. We can't individually call out over 600 of you. So that's where on you, it's you really lean on that campaign, but then use it as a reminder to your donors. So you don't have to necessarily come up with your own commercial. You don't have to come up with your own ad, but you can share it on socials and remind everybody, hey, Onward and Upward as a Pick.Click.Give participant, be sure to look us up in the application when you file. So we try and make it kind of that low hanging fruit, that easy couple of clicks. But a big thing is to remember with that statewide campaign, if we mention one, we have to mention everybody, and then this is going to go on for 2 or 3 years before we get done with the campaign, right? So we try and make it as accessible to everybody as we can to use, but do what's best for you with that as well. What speaks to your donors?
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. And I'll just say, right, don't hesitate. Again, if you're trying to keep it manageable and you don't have a marketing team, you don't have nobody on your board, or your staff are great at imaging and all the things, right? Just pick up and share. Right? Pick up and share some of the stuff that's happening, and just put your own little, your own message back to mission. So you're just adding some words. You're not trying to do the design. And that's really what it's there for. So we've seen some wonderful use of that tool in the toolbox. And I really just, there's no other, this is a statewide effort on purpose, right? So there's no other effort that you will engage in your philanthropy that has this statewide opportunity. So really celebrating that and utilizing it will keep everything more manageable.
Definitely. We have a question from Catherine. Is there any way to get data on what date an individual donor or individual donors are making their pledges? Great question. Not at this time. So the data that we do get, it comes from the PFD division directly every day. And they give us very low lane, like bottom line, here's how many pledges, here's how much in money, here's how many donors, and that's it. And then your pledge lists and your donor lists include the donor information, but not when they give. Always something I keep at the top of the wish list is more information from the PFD division. It really just depends on their scope. It's not anything in the statutes that says they can or can't provide that info. It really just comes down to what's going on with their workload. So I will continue to keep it on the wish list, but right now it is not available exactly when donors are pledging.
And so, what I would just say again is that comes back to our own communication strategies and ways of celebrating and helping people helping people kind of share out that they've made this choice and that you're included in that choice. And so, this can be some fun social media campaigns that you're doing. This can be some fun ways to try to help, again, people, that sense of that people feel part of something greater than they can be by themselves, right? So really thinking about how do you motivate that and how do you celebrate that? Lots of people have an extra, we talk about recognition. We'll recognize them kind of for the level of giving that they've given, but also you can do extra recognition for, create an extra recognition phase or process for people who've used the Pick.Click.Give strategy. Again, because it's a tool, but it's a different tool than all the other tools in your toolbox, especially because of this delay in receiving the information. So if you want, this can be a really important place to engage in, but again, do it with a plan. We've got about 4 minutes left. I think that's probably time for at least one more question if we've got one.
Nothing.
Otherwise, the gift of the Tuesday is 3 extra minutes in your life. Woohoo! Well, we're always so giving here at Pick.Click.Give. And so, well, I want to say thanks. I'm going to fix that slide in my slide deck before I get Jesse the final version. And so this recorded message and the slide deck and all of that will be available to you through Pick.Click.Give. Jesse usually is great to send out a nice message throughout the whole network. That those are available. So stay tuned for that. And always know that if you want to dive deeper and feel more connected in your donor development and you need support around that, Foraker is here to be helpful to you in that effort. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to be helpful. So Jesse, as always, a wealth of information you are. We'll do one more last shout out. Everybody, don't forget to fill out your application for next year. While you're thinking about this year, pretty please don't wait till the last minute. Any other final last minute messages, Jesse?
No, I mean, like I said, everything is going super smooth, super well. Given the uncertainty that's going on, you guys are just powering through, and that's what we need to do. We can be the stability for our donors when it seems like things are not stable, and we can provide them a way to help, which I think a lot of people this year and last year were looking for ways to help our community. So keep doing what you're doing. Doing great.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Be well, stay safe, wear a mask, wash your hands.